Welcome to another episode of the Wall Street Bets podcast, where we talk about decentralized finance and democratizing DeFi to make it more accessible to everyone. I'm Venus DeMille, and today we'll be joined by Wall Street Bets DApp advisor Chjango On-Chained to talk about the latest developments for the Wall Street Bets DApp project and community. We'll kick off with some market news. So Coinbase is in the crosshairs of the SEC, and it's hitting back. The CEO of the usually government-friendly exchange, Brian Armstrong, came down heavily on the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission late Tuesday night on social media, creating a firestorm. In a series of tweets, Armstrong told the story of what transpired between the cryptocurrency trading platform and the SEC, describing the market regulator's behavior as sketchy, referring to Coinbase's yet-to-be-launched Lend product, which offers a decent yield on stablecoin USDC. Armstrong said the company was planning to go live in a few weeks and gave the SEC a friendly heads-up and briefing. The SEC threatened to sue Coinbase if they proceeded with such plans. And this is going to be one of the more interesting battles to tune into, as it will likely create precedents for the crypto landscape and markets on the whole. In world news, in a report from Finbold, Ukraine is on course to legalize cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin after the country's parliament passed the second reading of the Virtual Assets Bill on Wednesday. The bill, voted on by 276 deputies, seeks to regulate cryptocurrencies, allowing holders to trade and declare them legally. And Algorand is on the move as it's creating its blockchain ecosystem. The price of Algo tokens surged 34% on Coinbase to nearly $1.84 during U.S. trading hours on Wednesday. That's Algo's highest price since June of 2019, when its mainnet was launched. The latest returns are especially significant considering that prices for Bitcoin, along with those for most other crypto assets, have fallen sharply since Tuesday. Due to its unique position in the financial services industry, Algorand is able to capitalize on the advantages of its pure proof-of-stake algorithm. The Algorand network became the first public blockchain platform to implement the pure proof-of-stake algorithm, and its unique architecture allowed it to achieve greater scalability without compromising its decentralizedness and security. And now to introduce our guest, Django On-Chained. Django is a legacy blockchain figure, having exited her role at NASA in 2014 when she became fascinated with Bitcoin and joined a community in the jungles of Bali, which was a group of early Bitcoiners that would become the early traders and builders in this space and help to carry out the mission central to the original tenets of cryptocurrency and decentralization. Django went on to become the vice president of ecosystem development at Tendermint, where she then led the development of the Cosmos ecosystem, which now houses over 253 apps and services, including familiar names like Certic, Polygon, Secret, Thorchain, Terra, and Mirror. She now hosts a podcast herself and continues to operate as a builder within the blockchain landscape. Welcome, Django.
Hi, Sarah. Nice to be on, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you in the mix. We know you've been in the background and doing a lot of incredible work, both to help promote Wall Street Bets and to also help build out the ecosystem around this project. Can you tell us just a little bit more about your role and how you came to be involved in Wall Street Bets?
Yeah, so the history goes back a long way. I knew some of the founders for many years and never was engaged with them in a professional manner. So yeah, I knew BTC Vix, met him back in 2017, and that was right around the time when I thought that I would dip my feet into speculating. And so he had started this Telegram group before that. It was called the Well Talk, alongside the altcoin discussion on Telegram called what was it, Coin Farm or something like that. It was started by AABTC. I might be getting the names mixed up. My memory is not yeah. And so BTC Vix was there at the forefront, starting these conversations on Telegram, helping people really learn how to speculate using technical analysis. And so that was really where I met them. And to be frank, back in 2017, I kind of really stuck out because there were even less females in the space. And so, when there's like one girl going into a Telegram group amongst like 99% of guys, you kind of like stick out, right? And so we kind of like, grew like a friendship from there. And then now this year with Wall Street Bets blowing up to where it is, I got involved with this project because there was just a lot of potential, right? This was kind of an open space, and it kind of seemed inevitable now looking back that there would be a coin tokenizing that, right? But why wouldn't there be? Yeah. So
Yeah, no, it did. It felt like a very fortuitous and necessary entry into the space. And can you tell us a little bit more about other roles that you're doing now in terms of how you move about in the day-to-day of your life professionally?
So right now, I'm kind of acting as an advisor to multiple projects. So before I left Tendermint, I was working there, on a full time capacity and like
Yeah.
really dedicating myself to doing ecosystem development and being kind of committed to that one project with like no room for conflicts of interest. Whereas lots of people working in the space kind of moonlight, right?
Hmm.
And so after I had left Tendermint, I kind of freed up and was open to a lot of different projects. And this was one of them that stuck out. And because of my past relationship with the other leadership on Wall Street Bets, that I decided this made sense.
Amazing. Well, we're lucky to have you, and just grateful for all of the sort of all the dots you're connecting behind the scenes. And we're going to get into in a little bit, what it is to build an ecosystem and what the nature of that role is, because it's something that doesn't really exist in the real, in the other
Yeah.
side
Oh
of the
yeah.
real world. And
Yeah.
there are a lot of people who I think, they come into blockchain, some immediately just get caught up in the market side of it, but a lot of people are actually really interested in working in the blockchain space and in the blockchain development. They often don't know where to begin because it is so nascent, and it's like they're not by nature a coder or a developer. How do they get involved? How do they add value? So we're going to get into that in a bit. But first, I want to go back to the jungles of Bali and the hero's journey that you found yourself on to also help to add a level of sort of romantic adventure to what's often thought of as this very digital space. Bali is not where we think of when we think of, technological innovation. It's maybe community, yes, but not necessarily blockchain. So what was happening in Bali in 2014?
So I actually went to Bali in 2015. 2014 was just my first dabble into Bitcoin. But in 2015, there was this tiny little group of individuals who would host a meetup every single week in the sort of startup hub. There was only one major startup hub in Bali at the time. I was in Ubud, which is a very tourist centric like heart of Bali. And
Yeah.
so I just went straight there and then landed, went to the startup hub, saw that there's like this small group of 10 to 12 people just hosting community meetups, and we're just like sharing gossip and news about the current day to day of what was happening in Bitcoin land at the time. And so, yeah, that was around the time when it was right after Mount Gox blew up. And so that was a hot topic of conversation. And there was also currency crises going on in the developing countries. There was the like India at the time just they had just um, what was it? They made small denominations of the Indian rupee illegal or something. They took it back, and so it like mass starvation and deaths ensued. And so anyway, that was like a real world problem that people saw that Bitcoin solved. So anyway, yeah, at the time that was what was going on in Bali, and yeah, that was also the same time when like I ran into Willie Woo. There was Virgil Griffith, and we were all in the same room together because it was just like a very small niche group of people, because just not a whole lot of other people in the world have gotten into it at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's just to
Yeah.
paint a picture of Bali in 2015.
So when you got turned on to Bitcoin and you discovered that there was this meetup happening in Bali, and was there something about that experience of discovering it that made you feel like you needed community immediately to surround yourself with and have people to talk to about it?
Oh, absolutely. Because if you're just discovering this nascent technology by yourself and you're trying to learn about something so deep, in all aspects, with cryptography, with economics, so you could just go into like one rabbit hole and just enter into the next one and still
Uh-huh.
come out thinking, oh man, I don't know anything about this. So you really do need to have this community support to buttress your learning at the very least.
Yeah.
not to mention build on it.
And what was the general aim of the group at the time in this meetup group? Was the aim to help sort of, form a foundation of what the future of this could become? Was it just about teaching each other what you were learning?
Yeah, it's all about onboarding new people. So that was a small scale experiment of what we're doing right now. So there's
Yeah.
something called Eternal September, which is with every turn of the year, there's new students coming to the university, and they need to be onboarded all over again with learning how to manage their keys correctly, not lose custody of their assets if they are doing it non-custodially, how not to depend on exchanges and all of that. So all of that is a hurdle to adoption, and it happens with every single bull market. So we were just doing that, right? We were learning key management amongst each other, learning best practices, and helping each other out with that. And yes, some of my most expensive lessons learned were happened at that time.
Yeah, the rites of passage
Yeah,
into which is a part of the hero's journey, right? I mean, it's there is the moment where you lose everything you think you have.
yeah,
Um,
pretty painful.
yeah, well, I think we all owe you a great debt for having taken those licks for us, because it's like, I mean, people are still obviously making those mistakes, but I
Yeah,
think it's a lot easier now than it was then, and I expect that the next sort of class, as you say, the next September class is going to find it, even leagues beyond what it is now. So, and when you were in Bali, were you the only woman in the meetup group as well? Was that sort of
yeah, largely the women that I had interacted with were kind of intermittent. They landed there for a 2-week thing, heard that this was going on, and then they left. And so I was kind of one of the only consistent people that attended those meetups. I mean, there were like 10 or 12 of us, so
yeah.
the odds of there being another one.
Yeah. I mean, did any part of that surprise you though? Did you get there thinking maybe it would be a little bit more balanced, or did you kind of know you knew what you were heading into?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
more the subject matter that was kind of the expectation. Because in Bali, actually, if you look at the greater ratio of men to women, there were by far way more women traveling through Bali than there were
Right.
men, because it's a yoga hub,
Yeah.
yoga and meditation and wellness hub. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Which would be such a dreamy place to be learning about all this stuff, as opposed to like in
oh
the
yeah,
concrete jungles of the cities we're trapped and going like, how do we manage the mental stress of what's happening?
yeah, that does add
Um,
an extra layer of complexity.
Yeah. And then, in terms of your views on cryptocurrency communities today, obviously, when I entered the space, which was much later than you, I immediately, was taken by the fact that, Luna being a really great example, that there were these sort of like Ode or Rune as well with Thorchain. There were some tokens that had such fervent communities that communicated so well, and there was a sort of tribalism around that. And I could almost immediately start to understand how essential that was, just not just the growth of the coin itself or the token or the project, but actually just to its sustainability over time, and
Yeah,
that's something that was so unique to me. I wasn't prepared to walk in and see this aspect of community playing such an essential and integral role. So how do you sort of see that today, having been a part of one of these OG Bitcoin communities?
cryptocurrency would not be where it is today if there were not cult-like behavior that surrounded this. There is a sort of religious and tribal phenomenon that's working in the favor of cryptocurrency, and that's really what it is, because people will buy into what they buy into, and it almost becomes part of their identity, right? A lot of the people on crypto Twitter does cash tags and say, well, these are the coins that I'm invested in, I'm part of this community, and it's kind of like a bragging point
Yeah.
/ part of their identity. And
Yeah.
so, if any coin project is able to touch on that successfully, they're going to be successful.
Yeah.
And those are the coins that you mentioned.
And did any aspect of the Wall Street Bets community, when you first came onto this project, did it immediately click for you that the significance of the community involved in this before it even became a launched token?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because Wall Street Bets is, I think the Wall Street bets phenomenon was largely divorced from crypto, but they did
Okay.
every single thing that made crypto successful. So, for example, like the memes, sort of groundswell of grassroots and organic movement of people just speculating and spending their spare their extra dollars or stimulus checks on this thing because
Yeah.
they're trying to invest and hedge against inflation. Like all of that created the Wall Street bets movement, and that's exactly what crypto was doing like years before, right? But Wall Street
Yeah.
bets just like blew up, and so yeah, it's like it was very like when I saw what happened with Wall Street bets, I was like,
Mhm.
aha, this is it.
Yeah, there's something there. I mean, it's so amazing to start a project with that community as well in this space. But yeah, it's it's interesting to see that sort of unfold and evolve. But again, it's like sometimes I'll find a project I really like, and then I'll go into their Telegram or go into whatever their Discord, and realize that it just doesn't have that sort of tribalism, or it doesn't have that tether to it, and it almost immediately gives me pause as to how long is this thing going to be around if the community's not coming together in a way that they can kind of see each other and identify with each other.
Yeah,
Um,
with Wall Street bets, there's this sense of commonality where you want to stick it to the man,
yeah,
and that's very strong. That's like a very sticky, because
yeah.
there's a lot of macro things going on, and people feel intuitively that there's something wrong, and they're trying to find technologies and answers that will help them circumvent whatever this thing that's wrong is.
Yeah. Is there anything you think that the Wall Street Bets community can learn from these original crypto communities that you were a part of? Or is there anything that feels like we've drifted farther away from, the aspects of decentralization or the things that were just so essential and so important to the people that were building out the fabric of the thing?
One of the strongest one of the strongest forces that's driving sort of blue chip coin status for projects like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Cosmos is the fact that there's like builders on the ground, like pushing the boundaries, right, in terms of innovation and
Yeah.
research, right, and so Wall Street Bets is largely speculative because of the audience it's addressing. There needs to be an interplay of both. There's building that is needed as well as like strong cult like speculation slash 4chan sort of feeling.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. And how would you recommend or how would you advise people communicate with the outside world? We're a project that really wants to bring everyone into DeFi. And we want to be the portal for people that are, just kind of scratching the surface of what it is, where we can say, look, this is a safe place. This is an exciting project. You'll find community. You'll be a part of, a governance forum. And you'll obviously participate in the upside of what this is. But we know that a lot of the people who are skeptical will say, well, it just feels not so much this project, but in general, crypto feels really cult-like, or Bitcoin just feels really cult-like. Like, how do you respond to that to people who aren't in it and maybe aren't even interested in being in it? How do you articulate it in a way that people can start to understand the value in it as opposed to getting, a little spooked by that aspect?
Yeah, people who are new to the space tend to be hesitant in multiple ways. One of the biggest things that is a hurdle to their adoption is the fact that they really don't trust themselves to play with DeFi. And so, if you were able to create a solution that lowers that barrier for them, then that hits one of the fundamental hesitations that they have. So, one project that I like to bring up that's a good example of this is Yearn. And so they've done a really good job kind of breaking down barriers, because what Yearn allows new users of DeFi to do is kind of invest in this thing and have the token appreciate based on the earnings that Yearn makes. So Yearn automatically invests and do yield farming on various DeFi protocols, and it does it for the token speculators so that the token speculators don't have to do it themselves kind of manually, right? And
Right.
so that's sort of similar to what WSB is doing with the ETPs, and that's what is going to make it for this project. Just like breaking down that barrier, making it really easy for skeptics and newbies to interact with in a safe environment where they're not going to have to worry about losing their money if they like did it themselves.
Yeah. And unlike 2015 in Bali, which I mean, it was very easy.
Yeah.
It was so easy. So moving into the sort of the topic of ecosystem development in blockchain, which again is something that we probably haven't spoken enough about in this forum, and I think is really, really interesting for anyone to tap into, because again, we have our traders, but then there are the people that they really want to understand what could their role be in this space. So using Tendermint and Cosmos as an example, can you just break down for us what does it mean to build out a blockchain ecosystem?
Yeah. So me being a non-engineer, but being extremely excited about the technicals of anything, as well as the mechanisms behind these projects that make it work, right? In a way where incentives are completely aligned. I had to really, so being someone who's like early in the space and non-technical, I had to really carve out a space for myself and where I would fit, right? Because I understand that these days, even if you're entering right now and you're a non-engineer, you kind of have to go through that same path. And so right around the time when I joined Tendermint, this was 2017, I was just wearing a bunch of different hats. And then over time, as I reimagined where I could drive the most value for the ecosystem, as in cryptocurrency as a whole, is something called ecosystem development, right? It's an amalgamation of like partnerships, strategy, marketing, and community. I like to think of it in terms of those 4 prongs. And so when I kind of imagined that title for myself, I'm like, yeah, this makes sense. And then after I put it on my LinkedIn and everything, people started calling themselves ecosystem developers. And I'm like, yeah, this makes sense, right? Anybody who's non-technical, but also wears many different hats and can add value in a way that doesn't interact with the code necessarily are ecosystem developers.
Right. Amazing. So you are really on the bleeding edge of not just the community side and the investment side and the how to lose money, in the early day side, but really, I mean, it sounds like you carved out, because there's no university you can go to that's going to teach you how to do what you did, right?
Yeah, no.
So
it was a bunch of trial and error.
Yeah. So you had to look at this space and say, I'm going to be a builder in this space. I'm going to build something. I'm going to drive value. I'm going to find a role. We need more than just developers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And you also landed, I have to say, in a beautiful place in terms of Tendermint. I mean, what an amazing place to be. But yeah, so tell us, once you sort of, figured out what your role would be there, how does it work from there? How do you build the ecosystem?
Yeah, again, it's just doing everything that is needed to do that's not on the engineering side, which is you have to really convey this positioning of thought leadership, because you're at the fore of innovation in the space, and then doing it in a way that's tactful, right? There's like a really, really fine line that you have to walk in this space where it doesn't come off as shilling, but it's more like educating. And so treading that fine line is kind of an art in itself. So doing that, producing thought leadership, as well as just conveying that a certain project is providing fundamental value, and then having the market realize this and kind of validate your proof of concept, and then basically like running with it, rinse and repeat, right? So that's kind of that is really what happened with Tendermint. There's like multiple things that need to happen. A, you need to identify that a project is fundamentally valuable, and B, upon having that conviction, you tell the world about it, and then C, the market either validates it or it doesn't over time.
So the ecosystem comes before speculation.
Yeah.
In that regard. So you can't look, for example, at, something like Terra without understanding what's developing around it. You can't look at something like Cosmos without understanding what's being built on it.
Yeah. With projects like Cosmos, because it's so complex, like there's so many different moving parts to it, and it takes at least 1 year of really diving into the technicals of this thing to really grok it. It's really it was so difficult to try and get the market to understand what Cosmos really was. But once the market did understand, after many years of just like, hey, this is how this works, or this is how this part works, and here's how these two parts connect together. Okay. After that, then the market realizes, oh yeah, that works out. And so, one of the most validating things that I saw recently was I think it was Joseph DeLong. He's like a operations person, I think, at Sushi Swap. He said, "Hey, he said something like he tweeted, I can't remember the tweet off the top of my head, but he basically said it's such a surprise how much the entire market and design space has converged around the original Cosmos vision, right? So that's like a validation of the POC,
right." Right. And there's different buckets as well when you look at an ecosystem, right? In terms of, financial applications or, other sorts of services. How would you break down the buckets that exist in any specific ecosystem?
I'm sorry, what do you mean by?
So in terms of the different categories of applications that might exist, when you look at something like Cosmos, which is, I think it's the internet of blockchains is sort of the concept behind this, right? So there are actual blockchains that exist within the Cosmos ecosystem. There are also financial applications. There are also infrastructure applications. What are the various, like, if you had to break that down into 3 or 4 different categories, is there consistency?
So if I were to go back to 2017, we saw that there was this Cambrian explosion of all these different dApps and use cases. And at that time, that was when most of these categories and applications of this tech kind of were experimented on. But then as the bear market ensued in 2018, 2019, a lot of those ideas kind of died out. And so now we've converged on like a few handful use cases that blockchain is really good for, which is DeFi, possibly decentralized identity, decentralized DNS, decentralized VPN, interoperability, lending, borrowing, more DeFi stuff. I guess NFTs. Yeah, NFTs are a big one right now. So non-fungible stuff.
Yeah. Did you see NFTs coming?
To be honest, no, I did not.
I mean, I don't think. Where did they come from? It's amazing the way they've dominated this cycle.
In retrospect, I can explain this phenomenon now, but I was definitely not ahead of the curve in spotting this trend before. So in retrospect, it made sense why NFTs became what they are, because there's just this inherent scarcity on the blockchain. So right now, when you say NFTs, it's largely non-fungibles, ERC 721s on Ethereum. So I'm going to speak to it in that context. And right now, the problem that is pervasive in Ethereum, that is kind of an existential problem that every protocol developer is so worried about, is this concept called miner extractable value, MEV. And MEV has to do with front running. It has to do with scarcity of block space and gas costs and all of that. So because extra block space on Ethereum is MEV, that means old NFTs that were minted in 2017, 2018 are inherently valuable because they occupy an extremely scarce resource. So right now, the NFTs that are kind of booming are are CryptoPunks, Bored Apes. There's the Ether Rocks, and the Ether Rocks was launched at least in it was like 2017, 2018. Same with CryptoPunks, and the reason there was this convergence of speculation around those NFT projects is because they're old in the blockchain context. because they occupy like a really scarce resource, which is old archival Ethereum block space, because they were minted back then.
Right. That makes sense. That makes sense. And I haven't heard anyone explain it like that until just now. So it's almost like a piece of real estate that has a certain provenance because of its age and where it sits in the blockchain.
Yeah. So because of the problem of MEV in Ethereum right now, old real estate on Ethereum is considered legacy and highly valuable because there's like time value intrinsic to it.
And each cycle seems to have some sort of a trend in that regard, would you say, in terms of, NFTs have been a big trend this year. What would you say was the major trend of the last cycle?
NFTs now and DeFi Summer 2.0, basically. Yeah. So, DeFi Summer 1.0 was very exciting because we were just kind of getting our feet wet and realizing what would be successful. But DeFi Summer 2.0 encompasses more than just Ethereum. 1.0 was all done on Ethereum. 2.0, which is where we are right now, is, well, we're experimenting on Cosmos. People are launching DeFi apps on Solana. They're doing it on Binance Smart Chain, and every other EVM compatible. They're doing it in various different platforms. So DeFi 2.0 is really robust in that sense.
Yeah. And would you say that, the success of, Binance earlier in the year, just in terms of BNB and the value of that token, was directly correlated to all the activity that was happening in the BSC space? Or would you say it has to do more with the value of the exchange itself?
It had to do with the thesis around Ethereum, because so BNB, the token, came before Binance Smart Chain. So because BNB was used as gas for Binance Smart Chain, the speculative value of BNB was higher than it should have been. So the fact that Binance Smart Chain was positioned as this Ethereum alternative or ETH killer with way lower fees, that's what got a lot of apps to build on Binance Smart Chain and thus spend gas using BNB and then drive speculative value up. But now, because Binance Smart Chain kind of has technical difficulties, right? They unfortunately Binance didn't hire, I guess, the best protocol developers. So therefore their blockchain is really screwing up right now. It's kind of just working on exhaust, basically. It's not really working. It works like 1 times out of 3 or something. But now we have so many different alternatives. There's Polygon, there's Cosmos, there's Solana, and other EVM like blockchains. So yeah, there's that.
So as a test of someone who's just starting to understand the nature of blockchains and, who doesn't necessarily have the same history in terms of being able to track something over time to see why one thing popped and another didn't, Solana's obviously having an incredible run these last few weeks. Algo's having a nice time this week, and Luna's been having an incredible run. And then there are a few that are sort of, out there, but it does feel like it's beginning a little bit of a horse race in terms of what's next and where do people want to build, and who can build their ecosystem the fastest and the best to sort of really compete in that space. How as someone new to crypto might you look at the landscape of different blockchains that aren't yet Solana and certainly aren't Ethereum to understand how to value them and where they might want to place their bets?
So the best way to evaluate the potential of any single project is really just to use it, honestly. You really can't get a good sense of the project unless you've used it. So, for example, we're in the middle of a war, as you've said, with all of these different chains that are launching decentralized exchanges and offering DeFi solutions to users. There is a frontline battle right now. So that's the reason why layer 2s on Ethereum, like Optimism or ZK rollups, are fighting with Polygon, and all of them are trying to get mindshare to use their platforms. So you really have to interact with the applications that are on top of them. So I actually was using several applications on Polygon, and they worked pretty darn well, and the fees are basically free and next to nothing. So that's one of the things, right? One of the killer features that everybody is fighting for is A, is it fast? B, is it low fees? C, can I trade on them? So the fact that there was something like Polycat Finance, which is like a new thing, and then there's something called Quick Swap, which is like the Uniswap on Polygon. There's all of these things, right? And then there's if you go to the Cosmos ecosystem, there's the Osmosis DEX, there's just launched Gravity DEX, and Sif Chain, and then Thor Chain. So you just have to try all of them out and really get a feel for each of the UXs to be able to evaluate the projects. And then you have to really look at the teams behind it. So the people behind it are really what drives it.
Yeah. And I'm curious too, because, Wall Street Bets sort of, entering the market when it has in this interesting time, and with these ETPs coming out, which, are built on Ethereum, and it's like, the token is on BSC. Do you think it's possible for one project to, happily house multiple chains and multiple, sort of faculties in that way?
That's the entire value prop of an interchain world. So it's inevitable. Lots of projects want to receive the benefits of various different chains. And if you think that it makes sense to launch a token first on Ethereum and then later, peg it or bridge it to another chain launched later for whatever use case you have, you can do that because we have blockchain interoperability now, right? That's been a pipe dream since 2014, actually, since Tendermint started. Blockchain interoperability was like one of the original visions of Jay Kwan, who started Cosmos. And the market has really validated that thesis. So, and now 2021, we have the technology there. And so we could do whatever we want.
Which is so exciting. I think everyone who's coming into the market now is so lucky in terms of not really understanding what some of those pain points were in previous cycles and previous years.
Those entering now are so lucky because we didn't have any of these nice things back then.
And then I also noticed, I was listening to your Thor Chain podcast the other day, which was so well done and was really an interesting insight into why people who are, again, that cult-like behavior around Thor Chain, why it mattered so much for that to be developed and built. And I got a lot of those questions answered by listening to that podcast. But I also, it also caused me to remember that there is also this divide between people who are crypto natives and have been in it for a long time and, retail investors who are new to the market, most of whom are coming through Coinbase or are coming through a major, centralized exchange, who might not really understand this history of why decentralization matters. And, I think, Thor Chain, has very popularly, tried to solve that and address it. And I know one of the things that kept coming up in that piece was about the gold standard and, not wanting crypto or Bitcoin to suffer the same fate. Can you just speak a little bit to that, about some of these original tenets that the people that, sat around together for hours on end, architecting what the future of crypto would be, what you might want to share with people who are new to the space, who are retail investors, who might not have heard of anything beyond Coinbase at this point, to really understand what that divide is?
Yes. So one of the biggest risks that blockchains or blockchain tokens have is that if a substantial percentage of the coins are custodied on exchanges, the idea is that those exchanges could corner the market potentially. And so one of the problems that we talked about on the Thor Chain podcast 13th episode was that right now it's almost an inevitability that we're going to have Bitcoin derivatives. So ETFs are kind of an inevitability, but there's also pegged there's WBTC, and there's going to be pegged Bitcoin as more and more bridges to the Bitcoin blockchain are built. We at Cosmos are building that as well, so it's an inevitability. But as if you leave most of your Bitcoin on an exchange, then the exchange could then do something like fractional reserve using your tokens, and then there could be a bank run in the future. So basically, if let's say Robinhood decided to launch a Bitcoin derivative, and therefore they could incentivize you, like say, oh, I'm going to give you like 10% return on your Bitcoin with Bitcoin. That's huge, right? It's a lot. So if they incentivize you to do that, then you're going to be like, okay, what's the harm of me sending my Bitcoin to Robinhood and just leaving it there and earning interest? Well, what Robinhood can do is it could just allow unlimited trading on its exchange and really hold only like 20% of it on reserve. Meanwhile, they can interact with other DeFi apps and they could earn interest on it. And therefore, now we have an over leveraged market similar to what we're seeing in traditional finance. And so that was one of the problems with gold when we moved off of the gold standard, right? And so that's why we have such an over leveraged economy. We have so much debt, and then eventually the house of cards can kind of fall. And so the genesis of Bitcoin was that it was always meant to be this kind of mitigation towards that, right? Bitcoin was born as a reaction from the 2008 global financial crisis. And to do that again to Bitcoin by way of the exchanges and banks, really, to corner this market, it would be devastating, right? It's like so antithetical to the genesis of Bitcoin. So that's what we're trying to avoid with DeFi.
Yeah. Thank you for explaining that, because I think it's a really, really important facet of all of this that is often lost, because it's not discussed until you get past the centralized exchanges, because you find, a token like Ruin where you have to go hunting for it. Which
that's why it's a Ruin.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was actually kind of like my entrance into DeFi, was getting turned on to certain tokens that just didn't exist on Coinbase. And I was like, I guess I have to go hunt this thing down on the other side of the world. And suddenly you're on a VPN in some foreign country, and it's you're
really on a hunt.
But yeah, and you're hunting, and then it starts to feel like a treasure hunt, and it starts to really get really fun at that point. And I think that's where you start to discover some of those tenets and some of those philosophies and some of those belief systems around decentralization that just aren't available to the average person entering for the first time. And now I want to kind of jump into something we teased earlier, which is, how to survive a revolution. How do you survive the revolution of crypto in terms of just basic lifestyle? I mean, you're firmly in it. It sounds like, you squarely come out the other side of the rabbit hole.
Still in it.
Still in the rabbit hole. But it's a thing that comes up all the time. And in every Telegram chat, there's someone that's like there for mental health, where they're like, I haven't slept in 4 days. My wife's divorcing me. Wow. I've developed a Postmates addiction, whatever it is, because it's so unlike anything that anyone's ever experienced, being tethered to a market that's 24/7, that's global, that, the corridors of which and the communities of which exist largely online. There's a social aspect to that, meaning you start to get drawn into social relationships that start to fill up some of your downtime. And it can be quite a surreal kind of break with reality in those early days. And I think people start, sometimes it's like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and can start to feel like a double life for a lot of people. And I think there hasn't been really a lot of dialogue put around, how to do this in a way that is healthy for you. And what does that look like 5-10 years down the road when you've really been at it a while?
Ooh, this is a tough question because I don't want to be put in a spot where I'm like advising people what to do with like wellness, and like work-life balance. But I know I could say personally that if this is something you're really passionate about, then you're going to be able to persist over the years much better than somebody who's in it for just like a quick flip, right? If you're just wanting to make a little bit of money on the side, then maybe you're going to burn out very quickly if you're just like watching the charts all day. But if this is like a revolution that you really believe in because you think, okay, we're in the middle of like the financial revolution of our generation, right? There was like another revolution before we had central banking, so that was like the paradigm then. But now this year, in this century, we're having like a blockchain revolution. It's going to last several decades. Like this thing is going to be playing out through the course of our lifetimes.
Yeah.
So you really have to like be passionate about this thing and like be driven by your bliss in order to kind of like go into this wanting to learn and seeing what's out there and really honing in on the skill of just like filtering out the signal from the noise. I think that's a skill set that's going to be really useful because like if you can't block out the noise, then you're going to be inundated and you're going to be stressed out and you're going to be feeling FOMO and all of that stuff. So if you kind of nurture that skill set, you'll be able to last a very long time. Like A, follow your bliss, B, be able to filter, and C, just have fun and don't take it too seriously, right? Like don't go in just like getting on this emotional roller coaster that it can take you on. You could be like dragged by this industry if you just aren't careful about it, right? Just like don't get on the ride and like be a careful observer while absorbing good information and just like filtering out the bad. So
yeah, that's amazing advice. And I think the noise is the thing people are going to relate to that because there is that FOMO of, there are too many tokens or too many projects. There's too many things launching. It's like, how do you just, focus on, the things that you have conviction about and keep it simple.
Yeah. It is hard to filter that out because there's so much information everywhere. So you really have to like know which channels to really like tune into and which channels to tune out of.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you spend a lot of time on Twitter?
I wouldn't say a lot of time. I do spend time on it, but not as much as somebody who has like, Twitter brain. It's like on it 24/7, just like, tweeting out thoughts every other minute or so.
Yeah. And is there ever a world in which one can depart Telegram, or is Telegram with us for life?
In what way? Like as a critical like messaging medium for crypto?
As an information source that seems,
I think it's
pretty
gonna be
heavily
there for
relied
life.
on.
Yeah. Telegram's I think Telegram's really good because like out of all of the messaging platforms, I trust Telegram because it's like encrypted and also the history of the founders, they were the ones who said no to their own government. So they weren't going to like give anything up, and it's encrypted and it's an alternative to Signal, which is privy to the US hegemony. So there's that. I think Telegram will be, and it's not censored.
We love uncensored. Uncensored is it's where you want to be. But I think it's so helpful and valuable to have these insights. And we have some audience questions for you that we're going to bring up, and so we are now going to go to a faraway place and bring our friend on, and we'd like to welcome Meow Meow to the show.
Hello, is this thing working? Is
this
thing working? Oh, okay.
We found you.
Hi there. Hi there,
welcome,
guys.
Meow Meow. Hi.
How you guys doing?
We're doing good.
Yeah, I've been listening. It's like it's really awesome. Nice to listen to you, Django. And Yeah. So we actually have a lot of questions today. Surprisingly, honestly.
Probably the most we've ever had.
Oh yeah, totally. And I think we're gonna start from the top one. Boom, 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 boom. And there it is. Yeah, Django, it's just question directly from you, for you, actually, from a user. You can't read Russian. I can. Okay, I can. His name is Ivan Cobring. He's asking, Django, tell us more about your work in NASA.
Yeah, so I started at NASA as an intern when I was in college, and then eventually I was hired into their early career program. That was when I was freshly out of college, and so I worked on the operations and business department. So what that department did was it was kind of the filter for every single contract that went through the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. So Jet Propulsion Laboratory is one of, I forget, it's like 7 or 8 laboratories in the United States that all had different niches. JPL's niche was Mars. And so that's why I like Elon a lot, because he's also addressing some of the same things. So JPL did Mars. We were issuing the Mars rovers. And my office was the one that, drafted the scope of work and estimated the costs for the projects, and then created the contract, and then got the subsidy pushed out to the government, because we worked with the U.S. government. Worked with various governmental arms like DARPA and DOJ, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, and all of the different aerospace companies. So before any project was to be started, it went through my office, and that's kind of the work that I did.
So technically, that means that you put your hand on Perseverance rover, right?
I did. I touched it good.
My
fingerprint is in Mars.
I'm telling you guys, if someone can get WSB to the moon or to the Mars, it's her.
No, we're not shooting for the moon. We're going to Mars.
We're going to Mars directly.
Yeah.
Screw moon. Moon is too close.
We're gonna partner with Elon and make WSB the native coin of currency for Mars.
Perfect. Mars needs its own.
Oh yeah, it's going to have its own currency.
Yeah.
Awesome. And also the next question comes from a user, Matthew Paqueta. What do you think is the biggest hurdle what WSBDApp will need to reach mass adoption? Which actually is a great question, to be honest.
Yeah, because WSB is addressing a traditional finance retail market, it's going to have to go through that, right? Because crypto natives are already adopted and onboarded into like how things work in cryptocurrency. And so, yeah, again, Eternal September, that phenomenon is just going to be all the more difficult for WSB to break through, because we're operating with new people to the space, basically, who don't necessarily know how to manage their keys in a non-custodial way, what DeFi even is. And so there's a lot of that onboarding curve that needs to be mended if we are to touch that market effectively.
All right.
That being said, it's a much bigger market than the cryptocurrency market. So,
Also, another question regarding the project in general comes from Don't Nag Just Back. Ever considering creating a legit Doge pool? Yada, yada, yada. But he loves his Doge. So what do you think about it? It's about farming. I guess it's about farming.
You mean like a pair? WSB Doge pair? Oh, I think that's a great idea. You might get a lot of impermanent loss, because every time Elon tweets about Doge, people are going to want to, take Doge out of that pool. But that being said, it's a highly liquid coin. It's like one of the most liquid coins. And so there's only value to be had from creating a token pair. We should do it. It should absolutely be done.
Why not?
Yeah. I mean, it's like a marriage in heaven, like Wall Street Bets and Doge, like two meme coins,
Perfect.
It's perfect.
I like it. Yeah. Also, I have one last question to you, Django. Do you own some NFTs, and why?
I do have one. It was actually gifted to me. It's a hash mask. I don't know if you know about that project, but it was launched like spring of this year. Somebody gave me that hash mask, and I still hold on to it. It's earning yield of the underlying token that hash mask is launched on. It's called NCT. So yeah, that's really all I have. That being said, I don't really speculate on NFTs because my brain doesn't work that way. So like I can't like emotionally connect with NFTs or art, and I just have to like rationalize myself into understanding it. So that being said, I wouldn't be a good NFT speculator. So
Okay. And talking about art, I actually have a question towards myself here. It's in Russian, so I'm gonna translate it. I'm gonna put it to screen. Meow, what the hell is wrong with your wallpapers? I know. I know. I need WSB to Moon so I can build my own studio. So help me, guys. I know they're awful. I completely agree with you, Andrew. All right. Thanks to you for a question, by the way. All right. I think that's all a good question. We have a little discussion here. I'm not going to pull it to the screen because it's kind of a long one on YouTube. Just I want to remind everyone, guys, please don't forget to follow us on Twitter, subscribe to YouTube. That's important, really. And ask more questions, more fun, right? You see.
Yeah.
And Venus,
yes.
We have a little announcement, right?
Oh, we do have a little announcement.
Yes.
And Django, I trust you're in on this, which is that Balancer Labs, who's been developing the ETPs for Wall Street Bets, has delivered them to our team, and they're in the process of being integrated into our site. So we can finally say we're very excited to know that these are going to come out in the next couple of weeks. And we have a video that is going to explain more about them that we're going to use as our exit from today's podcast. But first, I want to thank Django for coming on the show. You have been an amazing, amazing guest to host, the first female guest that I've gotten to host, which is so wonderful. I mean, if you're not a woman in crypto, it's hard to understand, what that rarity is. And there is I think there is a sense of like, this is so nice. So nice. So thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your insights. And again, Wall Street Bets is so lucky to have you, working your magic behind the scenes.
Yeah,
and
thanks for having me.
Yeah, sharing your legacy and your history with it. And it's great, I think, also for a community to get more familiar with some of the people that have been a part of this since the beginning. So thank you. Meow Meow, thank you.
No, thank you.
Is there anything else you want to add, Meow Meow, before we go to the video?
Well, one more thing. In Soviet Russia, you don't watch videos. Videos watch you. So now we're going to play it.
All right. Bye, guys.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.